Hello, folks, and welcome to the big bad return of our game with myself, James Stapleton and Michael Verney. This side, as ever, joining me. Michael, it's been a few weeks. There's plenty to talk about if we choose to.
Yeah, we needed to recharge the batteries a small bit, I'd say. After the inter-county and that, after there's so much going on and been so busy in the club season the last 4 or 5 weeks, and some counties are well finished at this stage, the likes of Carlow and obviously Wexford last weekend, and we've Conor McDonald coming on in a couple of minutes as well. Yeah, it's been busy, but a lot of clubs only getting into the kind of the meat and drink of their championships now at the moment, and we'll get stuck into them.
And you're hurling away yourself? Like, we've barely been talking. Look, believe it or not, you think we'd be talking all the time. We're sick of the sight of each other after doing so many shows.
Any chance I can get away from you, I'll take it. Been tipping away. We're in a semi-final. We've a last group game next weekend, and we're a semi-final then 2 weeks after. And I know you're playing with the Coola Ultras, or the thirds, and you're picking up any bits of information about Coola that you can get when you're now that you're in the opposition camp. How are you finding balancing playing and managing with Whitehall actually?
Well, I suppose the third team manager in Coola, Dan O'Regan, he's pretty understanding in the sense that I just show up to the matches and I don't have to train. So, that's kind of been the way I've done it so far. But you're talking about the opposite ends of the city, the north side, Whitehall, then down in Dalkey, Shankill neck of the woods, if you're going down to train with Coola, or play matches with Coola. But it's actually been great back playing. I only played one match last year, and I think I've played about 5 in recent times. Very enjoyable, bare in the square. You were wearing number 11 the other day.
Yeah, I was wearing number 11, but I've been shipped back to the other end of the field. I just feel like you wouldn't have whatever bit of experience I have. I just wouldn't have it in the forward line, just because you're used to doing certain things in defence or whatever. So I'm back there, even though the legs are probably creaking a small bit, but we'll hang on for another while yet. Ash, it's great to stay playing while you can, because there's only a certain amount of time that you can play, and once you stop, that's it. It's over really. So while you can, you should stay going. Something I meant to ask you as well. With Dublin, what's it like? What's it like managing when, to me, it looks like hurling is a bit of an afterthought. Like, I couldn't believe that the club hurling championship was started while the county football was still going on, and the likes of, if you were going to have Lee Gannon, would say, and Conor McDonald, they're both Whitehall men. Like, you don't have any of those lads available to you. Like, what's that like? And does it look like hurling is prioritised in Dublin? To me, from the outside looking in, not particularly.
Yeah, I think sometimes the Dublin County Board and setup, they need to ask themselves how important is hurling. Do they actually want to challenge for an All-Ireland? Remember that Blue Wave report or whatever it was, talking about winning an All-Ireland football title every 3 years, and maybe the Dublin Hurlers win it every 5 years or something like that. And that's going back a while at this stage. But like, you're starting your hurling championship 2 or 3 weeks before the All-Ireland football championship is over. So across the board, like, so for example, Whitehall against Coola, that was the first round. Obviously, my luck that I would be drawn against the team I played for 13 years in the first round. But you had no Conor O'Callaghan, you had no Lee Gannon, you had no Cormac Costello. So just as a spectacle, it's not ideal. And then between the end of the hurling league, now this was the same for every club, so it's not like poor mouthing, but obviously the more dual players you have, the more of a difficult it's going to be. But you, after the end of the league, which was like June 24th or something like that, and the start of the championship, which was like maybe something like 3.5 weeks later, something like that, there was 4 football league games. So you're asking yourself, if you've got a lot of dual players, how do you actually prepare for this championship? Because you could have training with 8, 10, 12, something like that at it. And then other teams who, let's say, they've big enough panels to accommodate a 30 for football and a 30 for hurling, wouldn't face that. But I'm just asking, like, for the county board, from the county board's point of view, and the split season has kind of meshed together more football league or league games in both codes. So, for example, there was 15 league football games and 10 or something like that league hurling games. So 25 games for dual players in the space of like 4 months or something like that. Where's the opportunity within Dublin? How much are they getting to really, really plan hurling, to really coach up hurling, all this kind of stuff, when those players there going for like 2.5 months and they had a match every 3 days. So this isn't poor mouth or anything like that. It's just, this is the sort of reality. And I don't think that helps push hurling. And like you're asking lads to go and win an All-Ireland with Dublin, and then a few days later, hey, will you tag out there, play a club match? And by the way, I know you're playing both codes, so will you play for the next 3 months after not having a break at all for the last 9? So it's a bit ridiculous.
Yeah, no, that's not simple. Like I haven't seen it been the case in any other county though, where a championship is actually started while players cannot play. If you get me, while county players can, I don't think that's happened anywhere else. And to the best of my knowledge, I don't remember that happening anywhere recently. I think they've probably set a bit of a precedent. Really, they're basically saying that the county players, even if they wanted to play hurling, they could not play because they were with their county team at the time. So I found that pretty strange now, I have to say.
Yeah, no, like it has happened in Dublin before, definitely. And like, having played with Conor O'Callaghan over the years, like there's been plenty of times where the first round or two, and because, we were going so well with that team at the time, you were nearly thinking, well, we'll probably win this game without Con. And that's not being arrogant. That's because it's the way it panned out. Like, but I don't think it's ideal. I don't think it's good for the championship itself. And look, again, it's not poor mouthing. It's just, this is the reality. And I don't think it really helps the championship. And it's the same for all. But look, I don't know if they'll change it overnight or anything like that, but it's definitely something they need to reflect on. If, that report from a number of years ago is to be followed through on at some stage. Because, yeah, I just wonder, like, the other thing is, by the way, if you wanted to, you can apply to have any championship games where you're missing inter-county footballers postponed. But then, again, if you have a big dual presence and you postpone a game, you're ramming even more games together later in the season. So, yeah, it's not ideal. It sounds like I'm complaining. I'm just telling you. You asked the question. I'm just telling you.
Yeah, no, because it has to be a headache. Just a couple of things as well. We had no shows when Crot O'Neill's won in Kerry. We had no show when Mount Leinster won in Carlow as well. I watched the Kerry final. Jordan Conway in particular was unbelievable that day. They all have and Conor McDonald, who's coming on here in a couple of minutes, they all have a fair bit of time off before they play their next game, but there'll be no complaining about not having enough time to enjoy their celebrations anyway. Put it that way. It's kind of like they start a new season now. And imagine they're going to could take 4 or 5 weeks off and then they'll go back into it again. And I suppose thinking about it long term for those that do win county championships in those split seasons, they're probably benefiting a lot long term because their season has been extended a hell of a lot compared to all the other clubs who are finished or off kicking football for the rest of the year now.
Yeah, like if they're one code only, yeah. The only trouble is they can get like a block of pre-season part 2 done or whatever, but who can they get challenge matches against? There might be the odd county where a team is a couple of weeks and maybe they want to play a challenge match in the middle of it, but it's going to be tough. And even if you're Crotta, how far do you have to drive to get a challenge match as well against teams? And so I think that's, as you say as well, that's not simple either. But yeah, great wins for those teams like Crotta. That was brilliant. Mount Leinster as well. Maybe they're back up on top again. Like, how much of a chance do you give the likes of Nevena and of course Mount Leinster, as we mentioned, going into the Leinster Championships, which it's basically going to be different weather by the time that they come back into play?
Yeah, they play in the height of summer, and I know we had a funny summer this year, but generally good conditions. But the break is, like, I suppose, listen, Ballygunner managed the break really, really well the last couple of years. So maybe, but they're, a real elite club team, potentially an inter-county team. So it's definitely going to be something tricky. And I'm sure Conor and the boys are going to have plans or things that they're going to have, they're going to set up over the next while to try and make sure the transition is as smooth as possible. But Ferns didn't get on great last year. The Raps didn't get on great the year before as well. So I'm sure that's a trend that the lads will be looking to book.
And as soon as you mentioned Ballygunner there, and they are a law unto themselves in terms of, like, I'd say they could be off for 4 months, throw them into the Munster Championship, and even if they don't win the game, they're going to be right there. Like, they've got such depth that in the Premier Intermediate, they've got Ian Kenny playing. So he'd been away for a while. Can you imagine coming up against him in Premier Intermediate? Like, this is a lad who's, very, very able at county level. Remember an All-Ireland semi-final, actually club, I suppose, a year and a half ago. No, last year. He did really, really well on Owen Cody. That's no mean feat at all. And if they win the Premier Intermediate this year, they'll have 2 teams up at senior next year, and they'll have to name a panel for each, which could cause serious bother.
Really? Or did they just regrade a load of lads and go, in Offaly, Burwood Intermediate maybe 3 years in a row, and we couldn't have a second senior team. So they they had an intermediate team again the next year, but 7 or 8 of that team could not play intermediate, if you get me.
Yeah,
But
yeah, yeah.
I'm not sure I don't know if it's the case where you can have 2 teams senior. I highly doubt it.
Well, look, one of the men who does research on the show, Dara, like he was saying that they will have 2 of them at senior level next year. Whether that, assuming they win, whether that's a good or a bad thing, I'd love to get people's comments. And actually, let us know what's the most exciting county championship on the go at the moment. I've been keeping a very close eye on the Tipperary one, of course. And like the Waterford one is going into the quarterfinals this weekend. Like Ballygunner are going for a 10 in a row. Oh, it's so bad for a championship to have one team going for a 10 in a row. Brilliant and all is there. It really isn't a good thing.
And you know, probably the worst thing about it is that you can't see an obvious contender. If you're looking at, say, who's going to take them down, it's not like there's a big like common force where you can say, oh, they've been, you know, within a score or 2 of them the last couple of years. Maybe Ballygunner's hunger will wane and they'll be taken down. There's no obvious heir to the throne, shall we say? The heir to the throne is the next Ballygunner team. You'd imagine the next crew of lads coming up.
Yeah, like last year, Mount Zion gave a bit of a decent burst in the final. I'm just trying to double check the score from the final last year. So it was 2-11 to 8. They gave a decent burst in the first half. Remember, Ozzie Gleeson missed the penalty, the one that he hit into the ground, and Stephen O'Keefe was able to stop it. The year before, Rowan Moore got absolutely paddled in the final. So yeah, who can possibly win? You'd think like Mount Zion because of the name, maybe De La Salle because of the name, but I don't think anyone truly believes that they're going to be beaten this year. We've got a man coming on here now, Conor McDonald, who knows what it's like to win a county title. Conor, what sort of a week has it been for you?
Jeez, hectic. The voice is
gone. The voice is gone.
Can you hear him there, Mike?
The voice is gone and the internet's gone as well.
Oh, you're back there, Conor. I hope. Right, I'll boot him out and hopefully he'll come back again in a second. I think he's on holidays, isn't he?
Yeah, well, anyone that knows Gorey well, he's not down in the Fowler or Paddy Blues or any of these places. He's over in Barcelona. I think he's after getting away from the madness. But hopefully he'll jump back in there in a minute, yeah. Anytime we ever won anything or even lost anything, my voice will be gone for a week after. So he sounds like he's been crowing, I'd say, for a couple of days, and more luck to him. He deserves it.
Gerard O'Dwyer says, great to see you back and covering county championships and related national GA news. Thoughts on Raymond Galligan being Cavan manager? We'll come back to that in a bit. Hopefully now we can get Conor through. Can you hear us okay, Conor?
I think we're good, are we?
I think we are. What sort of week has it been for you?
Jeez, hectic. I'm actually out in Barcelona here at the moment. I had to get out of Dodge there. It was getting too heavy for me. I know, it's just brilliant. Unbelievable few days. Just to walk down the town there with the trophy there, it was something that kind of drove us on since we last won it. We missed out in 2020, and everything with it, crowds, everything. So it was just unreal to get over the line especially with the group of lads that we have. It's just special, yeah. And
that goal celebration you had putting the arms out, how many times have people done that to you since?
Yeah, we kind of. I don't know what I think. At one stage there on Monday night, everyone was just doing this, singing every song. So it was, I don't know whether it was a celebration or what it was, but it's funny actually. My 3 cousins came over from Nottingham. They were here in 18 as well, and came over and they were saying, look, if you score a goal, I stopped them straight away there. I said, lads, if I score a goal, it'll be my first one for the year. So what's going on here? But championship. But anyway, they said you don't have to do a celebration, so they were just messing around. You should do this, you should do that, whatever it was. So I don't know what it was, and I just locked eyes with them on the open stand, and the 3 of them, they were doing it. So I said, "Heck it, I'll do it." It was kind of at a time where we were probably in front. So look, it's a bit of crap. It's grand that it worked out, but yeah, sure, it was just a bit mad.
Yeah, Michael.
What are those? What's probably the Monday is probably nearly better even than the Sunday in a way when you're sitting down with all the boys. What's that like? Just knowing that everything you've been through throughout the year, all the training, all the hard work is all kind of paid off. You're kind of just sitting there. You don't even need to talk really. You're just kind of soaking it all in.
Yeah, like sure. On the Sunday, it's a bit mad. Like, you know, we had a parade. There was a parade organised for us there. Pipe band going down the main street of Gorey. It's probably the best town in Ireland to do that because it's just straight down the whole town. It's just class, and all the people coming up to you, and people coming out in the streets. It was just unbelievable. And I think sure you probably seen footage of the Wexford homecoming when we came back in 19. That's kind of, you know, everyone always says go to Gorey because of the street. It's a big open street and bodies just flood into it. But no, it was just special. And I suppose the big thing that we were saying was, you know, on the Monday, everyone is kind of, whoever is there, and, you know, everyone else is kind of gone to work and all that kind of crack, and normality is resumed. But it's just nice to have, you know, the club people there and the stalwarts there, and the stalwart drinkers probably too. So no, it's great to be just with the lads, and you know, you're just reminiscing on the year that's passed. And the game was on there in the complex at 2:00 and at 5:00 and the whole lot. And our junior game was on in between them, and you know, it's just nice to have those moments as a group, you know.
Someday for the club all told, Conor, like winning 2 county finals in one day.
Oh, sure. Crazy. I was actually saying we only arrived down, say, about 2 or 3 minutes left in the junior A game. And, you know, you kind of get a sense of it. I remember in 19 as well with Wexford, we were going up on the train and the minors won. And we're saying, geez, like, you know, if we don't win, it'll be a bit of a downer, like, regardless, because obviously everyone's going to look at the senior. And I remember we normally always go together. Myself, Lee Kinsley, Crow Cullen would have been involved in both panels, and they obviously had to go down earlier. So it was just myself, Charlie McGuckin, and Jack Cullen went down on Sunday. And they were saying in the WhatsApp group, save 2 seats, like, don't bring anyone else, because if we win, we're all going home together. So, yeah, it was just unreal for the club. And you know, you have extra bodies there, you have extra players there, and everyone's celebrating. You know, there was one stage there I didn't even know where the Bob Bow was. I just had the Junior A Cup there for hours. But yeah, no, it was just hectic, but just brilliant. Yeah, really, really good.
And in terms of your full year, Conor, like, you had a child before the start of the season, yourself and your partner. What's that been like, adjusting to that?
Yeah, sure, it's been heavy enough. To be fair, I owe an awful lot of. That's why I said I'll book the old trip to Barcelona. You know, give her dues as well, because you know it's a heavy commitment now. I remember going up to World Cup game in January, probably about 7 or 8 days after Melissa had the baby, and you know, you're probably coming home thinking, is it a good idea to do that or whatever it was? But I suppose in ways you're just trying to, you know, if you're a week not there, you're probably a week behind, and then a week to get back, and then a week to get up to speed. You know, you just always have that in your head. So. Look, it was difficult. The year in general, it was difficult for Wexford. But it was just brilliant to be able to come home, go back to the lads in the club, have a full month there, albeit we probably didn't want it, but you know, it meant that we were out way earlier than expected with Wexford. But to go back and just get in with the lads, and you know, everyone's families kind of coming together, even at times, you know, during the year at Wexford, the club lads were always there for me, and there for Cottle and there for Charlie and stuff, and we were going through a tough run. And no more so again with Melissa and parents of all of us in close families. Actually, my mother broke her 2 ankles on Saturday night. I don't know if you heard that, but yeah, so she didn't get to the game. She's still struggling away. So that was a massive shame. I tell you, we were going over to Tesco to get a few bits there. We were coming back in the door, and she just rolled one ankle and tried to save herself.
Jesus.
So look, to be honest, we just have an unbelievable support network. Between family and close friends and just everyone around in the club in general. It's really good for that. So it's been tough, all right, at times, but definitely makes it all worth it when you see Jude there, you have the cup and the whole lot. And I think the lads all bought into that, for myself and Cottle as well. You know, quarterfinals, semi-finals, they were saying, like, we'll make sure we get you marching around the band with Jude and Reen, and that was really special. And that was kind of me and Cottle's thing as well throughout the whole club championship. Like, we really wanted that, like, and you know, Kelly, the boy from Killan or whatever it was, that's the thing that normally rings around the first tune they play. And I remember that was, I'd say, it's more Spotify hits now than any other yoke in the last number of days. So no, it was just really special, and I owe an awful lot to my close family and friends, as I do every year, really, to be honest, for the commitment. And it just was a mad one this year.
What's been the biggest shock to the system with fatherhood, or is there any little yarn you could tell us where it was particularly difficult or funny?
Yeah, well, I remember we went down to play, what day was it? Oh, the league final. Played the league final, so normally we wouldn't play really any league with Gorey. And when we were knocked out with Wexford, we went down to play the league final, and the baby was teething and stuff like that. And you know the way normally you'd be thinking, oh no, me night 2 nights before and me night before, you know, try to get a good night's sleep. I'm not, lads. If I got 1 hour that night, I swear to God, it was the roughest night we've ever had. It was that Saturday evening. Then the game was on. And I remember Melissa saying to me about 2 o'clock, "Do you want to go in and get a bit of a sleep there just before the game?" And I knew if I went in, I probably wouldn't wake up at all. So I said, "Stick it out." So it was then I realised like I need to stop worrying about, you know, night sleep and the whole lot. You know, operating on 1 or 2 hours to go play a league final, and it worked out grand for me. So not too bad. So I think I probably over the years I've got hung up on, you know, trying to get every single thing right, and so much stuff is taken out of your power now with how the baby is and stuff like that. So that's probably the number one thing that sticks out to me anyway.
Yeah, Verney's a new dad, so I say this all sounds familiar, doesn't it?
Yeah, well,
Yeah, no, I was actually chatting to Brian Malone from Wexford, Conor, there when he retired, I'd say it was, and I said, like, what was it like playing county after you had the kids? And he said, well, it probably made me realise that, you know, everything I was doing, I was probably maybe going a bit too far. That I didn't maybe need all the sleep or whatever I was getting. But sometimes you survive. I've had a couple of days where I've gone out playing matches there recently after a couple hours sleep, and you're just dead on your feet. You're gone. You're a corpse before the game even starts. Then other games you feel great. It's kind of a bit hit and miss. But sure, listen, it's great. I can't imagine what it was like for the parade. I'd say that was some buzz. You must have been absolutely buzzing for that.
Yeah, just special, like, and you know, just even after the warm up, I probably, you know, I don't know, I just really wanted to win this so badly, probably more than any other year, and you know, the lads kind of nominated me to be captain for this the 3rd year, and I remember just everything just like really, I don't know, it was just overpowering there in the warm up, and I just heard the band in the middle of the field before we were doing the warm up. I had to nearly just tell the boys there were poking around in trees there, go ahead, need to get a bit of water there to compose myself a little bit, just because I knew what was at stake for us as a group, and you know, it was just special then to come over then and for Melissa to hand Jude over beforehand in the parade. Now we went on the open side, all right, and I don't think I've heard her cry like that for a good while. Anyway, it was just really nice. She settled down then again. The wind was blowing down, and obviously we were on the you know, the top of our queue, so the band was right in front of us, but it just seemed to get that little bit louder with the wind blowing down the field. But yeah, it was just really special. And I know Cottle is I think there's 8 or 10 days only between our 2 babies, so we were in the same boat there. And as I say, it was kind of a little thing for us this year to really push on and have those little moments, you know.
It's hard to believe that you're on the go with the intercounty since 2013, if I have it correctly, and you're not long gone 28, are you?
Just gone 28 there July, yeah. Just gone 28 in July, so yeah, it's been a hectic time. All right, it's been lots of ups and downs, but yeah, sure. Look at it. It's seems like an age, and then seems like it just goes like that as well at times, you know. And when you look back on it, like your debut and going out and hurling, all happens in a flash, and then you know, you get years like this year, and you're thinking, Jesus, that was the longest year of all time, even though it was the shortest, you know. But yeah, it's just crazy to think that it's such a, you know, a big chunk of your whole life in involved in Wexford, you know.
What was it like this year, Conor, at Wexford? I'd imagine it was very tough, particularly after the Westmeath game. I'd imagine that. I think it was only a week, was it? I'd imagine that was probably one of the longest weeks of your life. I'd say you're trying to, like, I don't know, you're nearly avoiding people or not wanting to see people, and
avoid people at all costs. Yeah, avoid people at all costs. That was an emotional week. You know, the best looks that you get there when you're in a garage there, or you're walking down the street there or something, and you're not getting a whole lot of that week. I tell you that, you need to go do it now, and that's it. And you know, we put ourselves in that position. After Westmeath, it was obviously such a shock, and would have been such a shock anyway. If you know, for us and for, you know, I think it was for them, and they were due. You know, they were well deserving of their win and stuff like that. Absolutely, no questions there. And we were just so disappointed, and we knew that we'd you know, a monumental task.
might be gone there. Is he? Can you hear him, Shane?
I can't. I might just do that thing of kicking him again, and hopefully he'll come back again in a second. But yeah, I mean, and we're going to ask him, hopefully Conor can get back online there. But Keith Rossiter has been, lined up as the next Wexford hurling manager, and he's the under-20s boss for the last 2 years. So how do you see that appointment? I mean, Eulert de Bala, man, he's done it all with Wexford, played for them for so many years, and he'll know all the new players coming through as well.
Yeah, really think they needed an inside man, I have to say. I just really think they needed an inside man after the last, what are we looking at? 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23. I just think, just from gauging the pulse down there, I think they needed an inside man. I think there'll be plenty of outside voices in the coaching ticket from what I'm led to believe. He obviously served under Davy, I think, the whole way through Davy's reign. Conor, we were just chatting there about Keith Rossiter taking the job. Someone you obviously hurled with. What would you have been your initial reactions of Keith taking the job in?
Yeah, sure. Jesus, absolutely delighted for Keith. When I first came into the panel, Keith was probably just a massive leader in the group. Like say him, Rory Jacob, Richie Kyo, all these lads would have been the stalwarts at the time, and Keith was probably Wexford's best hurler in my opinion. He was the hurler in Wexford at the time when we were in development squads and stuff like that, and he soldiered a long time when Wexford hurling wasn't anywhere near what it became maybe over the last number of years. And he definitely, I always felt like he was really smart. He always had his ideas were always good. He had his head screwed on, and look at he's probably shown that over the last while there with the 20s and stuff like that. He's been involved in club teams and stuff, and he's obviously with Eulert, he would have had a massive say in the dressing room and with managements and stuff like that. So he's an incredible man, good Wexford man, and he'll be hoping that he can improve things from where they were left last year as well, and going forward. I think he got 3 years, I think, was it? So he'll be I'm sure he'll have a really big plan in there, and you know what, probably he's a lot of courage to take it at this time as well. Where we're on the back of not a wonderful year, and probably our worst year since I've been involved. So he deserves an awful lot of credit for that, and you'd be hoping that a lot of people give him the backing, because he's sticking his neck out in ways as well to get us back to where we really want to be.
And just the fact that he is a Wexford man as well, is that important? Is that something that there's an appetite for?
Yeah, well, sure. Look, it's whoever the right man for the job is going to be be honest. Obviously, with a Wexford man, or with a lad who's wore the jersey before, he knows the feelings, he knows everything like that. For me personally, I think it's a great appointment and a great idea. And obviously he is the right man for the job, and he's bringing all the credentials, he's bringing everything. He will have his plan in place as well. So it probably is an added bonus too that he is a Wexford man.
And then just for this year, what do you think went wrong this year?
Haven't a clue. I think the best thing I done was to get stuck into the club as quick as I could. Still probably haven't thought about it or processed it, and probably we went through a league campaign where we were absolutely riddled with injuries. And I suppose as a group we probably thought, right, we need to everyone individually get right and try attack the championship as best we could. But to be perfectly honest, we probably were trying to tell ourselves that we were going to be fine and stuff. We've done everything correctly. We're just so unfortunate at times with injuries, and we didn't. It wasn't for a lack of effort or anything like that we did, but we had the year that we had. But I just think there was a couple of things probably that didn't run our way, and that kind of momentum into a championship wasn't there, and it's certainly something that we need to. We can look at a lot of things, but there's things there that were so out of our control as well that we just fell accustomed to them when it was just a freaky year, to be honest.
And it kind of feels like this is the peak time for Wexford to really produce. Like you said, you're 28. Lee Chin is probably not too different in age. Matt O'Hanlon probably 30 or so or something like that. There's a lot of key lads who are at that perfect age, who've still been at the top of their game, but they have all the experience as well.
Yeah, I tell you, I feel 38. The amount of hurling that's gone on, but anyway, it's a good complaint. But yeah, like we've a lot of lads there that have kind of soldiered together. Probably came into the panel when Keith was actually, heading out the back door. So, he'll know an awful lot of lads there as well. He soldiered with a couple of us there for only a couple of years, like a few other lads, D. O'Keefe. Lee Moog, Matthew, as you said, Lee, he probably was with them a year or two before I went into the panel myself. But maybe the stars might align. Hopefully, I hope they do, and I hope that we can progress. And because, I suppose when you look at it, probably isn't when you're hitting 10 years now at Wexford, that there's not going to be another 10 years in you. So any bit of success now is vital for us as a group, really, and that kind of core lads who come in around that time.
Conor, just want to ask you quickly, where in Jays did you develop that paw over the years?
I don't know. I tell you, as I said, I done an interview after the game, and I spent 7 weeks trying to get one ball into my hand, and that's the truth. I was out around the middle of the field and in the half forward line a lot with the club this year, and underneath puckouts and stuff, and I kind of nearly half christened myself to Bonner there for a while. Everyone was saying, "You're not scoring, you're not doing this, that, and the other," and I was trying to justify what I was doing on the field, and I was probably going home thinking, "What am I doing at all?" But yeah, look, it just, I suppose Sunday was just probably a freak day where, a couple fell into the hand, and I end up just thinking, then sure, feck it, every time I just want to go out the hand because they're landing, and it's you're marking a fella like Shane Reck, who in my opinion is one of the best man markers in the country, if not top 3 or 4 anyway. In my opinion, he's done a number on some of the best lads in the country, and him, Damien, them pulling and dragging out here and there. They're top class men, absolutely top class men, and I don't know, it just seemed to happen, and you just get days like that. But in general, I suppose where it did come from maybe is, we were only talking about it there on Monday. Remember being in school, and we always used to say no hurls. So we used to go in up the back pitch, and there would be lads there that didn't even hurl, and they just wanted to be bullies and go around baiting you. So we used to go up to a tennis court up the back of the school, and there'd be one lad with a hurl about 35, 40 yards away, and he'd drive it up into the sky as high as he could. And I'm not joking, there'd be 20 lads there. He'd be going in with ripped shirts, and after a while we decided then to all wear t-shirts like these 5 t-shirt underneath your white shirt. So you just could wear that then. If it got ripped, you could just throw your shirt back on then. So that's probably where it came from, I'd say. And then just when I first went into the Wexford panel, I remember Liam Dunn, Ger Cush, Billy Byrne, these lads always used to say, like, if you get that ball into your hand as quick as you can, it's yours then, you can do what you want with it. But that was always in my head, just to try to get first phase possession. And I don't know, it's probably got me out of jail, because I probably wouldn't be blessed with pace or anything like that. So if anything, that gets me the yard maybe at the odd time.
Yeah, and final question for me, Conor. Just how good Limerick have been the last 4 years, and you've played against them a few times. Like, does it feel like the gap to them is kind of narrowing a little bit? A lot of teams have got closer. I'm not saying they're not still the Kings, they obviously are, but like, can teams aspire to take them down next year?
100%. If teams don't, I think you shouldn't be going into the championship at all. We played them in 2014 and haven't played them since the championship, which is crazy because we've played everybody else. So we only played him once, and that was kind of before the whole regime of John Kiley and the whole lot came in. We played him in the league and stuff. They probably were without a couple of lads here and there. So we've never actually played against a probably full strength Limerick team, which is, again, as I said, it's crazy to think, because he seemed like he played everybody. But look at Kilkenny. We've probably had Kilkenny's number the last 2 years, and they end up in All-Ireland finals, get beaten by a point, and then beaten by, I'm not sure how much they were beaten by, in the year just gone. But, Clare seem to be the red hot favourites, to be the ones to go Tipperary around the place. As I said, if you don't feel like you can beat anyone, well, then you probably shouldn't be anywhere near it. And that comes as an individual and then comes as a collective unit. But we'd be hoping that at some stage you'd meet him in an All-Ireland final or somewhere like that, or an All-Ireland semi-final, not have to meet him through a qualifier or anything like that. So we've enough to be worried about now in Leinster, in Galway, Dublin and Kilkenny, and the likes of Westmeath and all these lads. I know that they went down and stuff, but we've enough to be worried about in Leinster now than we do in Munster. So. Okay,
well, look, Conor, you've been brilliant with your time. Really appreciate it, and enjoy that trip to Barcelona.
Yeah, thanks very much. Might go for now. We'll walk around New Camp there. I think it's been demolished, so I'll see what the crack is anyway.
Good man. Cheers, Conor.
All right, lads. Thanks very much.
Good luck.
Okay, great to have Conor there. Porter straight in with a comment. Great win over Kilkenny for them. A lot of pressure for that game, so hopefully Wexford get more consistent. Yeah, on the back of that Westmeath loss, that was a huge win as well. But like, it is backs to the wall stuff. it's just so frustrating probably for a manager or the players themselves that they're like, geez, why couldn't we do that the week before?
Well, you know something, it's a bit like Waterford in 2022. No one could really put their finger on what exactly went wrong. It seems like in Wexford, nobody really is able to put their finger on what went wrong, apart from maybe a couple of injuries and stuff like that. So while Matt O'Hanlon, Lee Chin, Connor, Lee Moe, McGovern, D. O'Keefe are still on the pitch, they need to make hay, because they could have a tricky couple of years when those players move on. So you'd hope that Keith Rossiter and the lads will hit the ground running straight away.
Yeah, Tom O'Keefe says, Michael, thoughts on Declan Kelly being named the Offaly football manager?
Yeah, probably. Tom was probably realistically, he was the leading candidate. He'd had a couple of years since that under 20 success. He's obviously had plenty of success with St. Lomans as well. To me, he was the outstanding candidate for the job, and I don't like we've gone looking outside the county a lot. We finally kind of have an outstanding candidate within the county, and he was able to get the likes of, would say, Jack Bryant, Cormac Egan, John Furlong, all those lads. He's able to keep them fit throughout campaigns. The big thing is that a lot of those lads haven't been able to stay fit when they've been involved with senior panels. So hopefully he'll be able to finally kind of bring a good crop of those lads through, because very few of those lads have played senior championship football. So yeah, very good appointment in my view. It's going to be interesting to see how things go. But like we're well down the pecking order at the minute, and are going to be for a couple of years, you'd imagine.
Yeah, I suppose it doesn't help either, like that a lot of these players have to go through long seasons playing probably senior with their clubs or underage with their clubs, depending on the age that they are. Then they go play college, then they're straight back in with counties and all that kind of stuff. It's funny, like you think of players coming through and all that, and they're getting absolutely flogged at such a crucial time when maybe they should be physically developing rather than going from match to match to match to match to match. Speaking of county managers and actually a vacant position, Tipperary, we've heard nothing there since David Power stepped down quite a while ago. I think it's around now that Tipperary wanted someone appointed, and there had been that talk of Kieran Donaghy, but no real word on that front at the moment. And then one other one, Raymond Galligan, so 36 years of age. He's been the goalkeeper for a long period. He captained them to that Ulster title a couple of years ago. Looks like he's going in with Cavan, and with what a stellar lineup he has behind it.
Can you just go through them here? Like I don't know what sort of work he's done in the last couple of weeks, but some of the names that are there.
And now sometimes we do talk about, like, sometimes you stack your backroom team and it's almost like to make yourself untouchable. Well, look, I assembled the biggest team possible, but in some ways you're like, well, what's this person bringing to it? It's a big name, but I don't see how it relates to it. Like getting a former rugby player or whatever in as a performance coach. You're like, well, what's he tangibly offer? But like, look at this backroom team. The Meath Ladies All-Ireland winning manager, Eamon Murray. I think we can all see with the way he took Meath football from intermediate to All-Ireland champions and playing unreal football, that he could offer something. Former Tyrone forward, Stephen O'Neill. Then there's a former Dundalk FC player, Gary Rogers, who's part of the Monaghan backroom team. He's a goalkeeping coach. So again, you can see the link up there, the tangible sort of thing that he can bring to it. It's a fair old lineup.
Even Katrina McKiernan's involved in the backroom team, and you're thinking that's a bit left field, but she's obviously from Cavan as well. So, like, do you know what I mean?
She knows something about running.
Yeah, there you go.
I think that's
exactly. The mad thing about Raymond is that, like, he hasn't retired or anything yet. So, like, I presume he's going to retire and he's going to take on the team is going to be full time. I know someone said to me this year that Conor Laverty could have potentially played player manager for Down, like maybe somewhat tongue in cheek, but I don't think Raymond's going to be doing that. But like, by all accounts, from what I'm hearing, he seems to have had a bit of a role coaching wise, even while he was involved in the setup. But it's a big departure for a player to go straight from playing straight into management. It's left field enough now. It's one of the most left field kind of appointments in a long time. I'm trying to even think about other kind of left field ones, but just to go from that quick to playing to management, like, I don't know. He's obviously maybe done bits at club level and with his own club lacking, but still, like, it's a huge jump. There's no point saying any different.
They'll be hoping he won't be lacking, huh?
Yeah.
Just before we go to another managerial development, Owen Cleary, he's announced he's taking a break from intercounty football in 2024. That's a big blow to Clare. Really, really good player. Is he brother or twin brother of Conor Cleary, the fullback?
Twin brother, yeah. And he'd also said that basically when Colin Collins kind of stepped aside, that was a clear, he could draw a line in the sand. He'd wanted to go and take a break for a year and go travelling. But while Colin was there, he felt he couldn't. And that's kind of a lot of lads, I'd say, felt duty bound to Colin. But now there's a new manager coming in. We don't know who that is yet. I think it's, from what I'm hearing, it's the outgoing under-20 manager. But we don't know yet. And that's the difficulty in not having a management team in place. Like Michael Murphy, was Paddy Carr, Michael Murphy retired before Paddy Carr was, I think, didn't he? I think he did. No, you need to have, in order to not let lads fall through the cracks, you need to have management teams in place. And that would be a worry for Clare, Tipp and a few other counties as well, that while they're waiting, lads will be like, oh, we don't really know what we're doing next year. We might just go and do X, Y, and Z that I've been planning to do for a while.
Can you think of any other really good twins? We've just named our own Cleary and Conor Cleary. Who else across the GA? It's funny, I was just watching back a bit of Bursley against Killadangan, which happened a week and a half ago. We'll be talking to Tipperary Championship soon. And Paul Flynn and Alan Flynn, they're twins, and they were both. Paul Flynn particularly was firing over some great scores. Any other twins come to mind?
Were Rod and Dave Guiney twins or brothers?
I thought brothers.
Okay. Twins.
Are John and Tony McEntee, are they twins?
They're twins, yeah. And pretty
Ben
much
and Jerry O'Connor?
Ben and Jerry, yeah. Yeah, no, you're starting to speak my language now. I couldn't actually think of any. At county level.
And Downey?
No, just sisters, I think.
I think they might be. I think they're twins.
Maybe so.
Are the Helians twins?
They're twins, yeah. Peter and Jar are twins, yeah.
Are you going to contribute here at all, or
no? I can't. You've caught me totally off guard with the twins.
Sure, I can tell you that. Off guard as well.
It's some achievement. Like to get one family member through to county level is something. To get like two guys or girls through to play county level. I'm also as well, like within a club, when you see twins coming, like we'll just say twin boys, you're like, lads are literally like this. And like, if you just say I was living in Burr and you'd 3 kids, like, and there were 3 girls, like, it's amazing. The GA club kind of switches off, and all of a sudden the Camogie club is like the antennas are up. It's amazing, like.
And are you going to become a ladies coach sooner rather than little girls coach?
More than likely. I don't mind what she gets involved in now, to be honest with you. But the one thing she will definitely do is running, without a doubt. Because if you can run correctly and run well, you can play more sports.
So you're going to set up an athletics?
No, there's a couple of them close by here, to be honest with you. Yeah, if you can, and I've had enough. I got to learn from my own mistakes. I've had enough injuries throughout my own career, so I'll try and prevent.
You overtrained yourself.
I did, yeah. No, it's true. No, I did, yeah. But I needed somebody to, pull the reins in, pull the horns in, and probably tell me. It was too late by the time I did.
You could be tamed.
Now I don't train at all, and I'm able to play matches.
And it's working fine for me as well. Tom and Stephen Kelly and Laois. What about Donal O'Donovan and Cormac O'Donovan for Clare?
Yeah, obviously everyone remembers Donal from the point at the end of the 13 All-Ireland. Cormac got a point at the end of the 2009 under-21 final, I think. So they actually both hit key points at the end of All-Ireland finals, yeah. Cormac kind of drifted off. Maybe hurling wasn't as much of a focus for him, while Donal kind of stayed at it. Funny enough with twins as well, they're usually they're usually different types of characters completely. One can go one way and another can go another way.
So keep your comments coming in. If there's any great GA twins you can think of, let us know. Jim McGuinness taking over Donegal once more. What were your thoughts when you saw that? I'll tell you what I thought. I thought, okay, came in and revolutionised Gaelic football in the sense of how they played, and it wasn't brilliant to watch initially, and that 8 points to 6 All-Ireland semi-final will never be forgotten in 2011. But there were times when it was thrilling, and there was some of the games in the atmosphere of that All-Ireland final in 2012, Donegal Mayo, was something I'll never forget. No more than actually the Kildare quarterfinal the year before, when there wasn't that big of a crowd, but when it got to extra time, it was just rocking in there. But if he's going to revolutionise football again, after 10 years of being away from it, and you couldn't say, like, obviously he went out to football, really brave thing to do, went to China, went to America with Charlotte Independence. That only lasted 14 games. Had a spell with Celtic before that as well. You couldn't say it was a a ringing success just yet. Maybe he'll go back. But to then think he'll come back to soccer or Gaelic football now again, it's a big ask to think that he can revolutionise the game again. Maybe that won't be his plan, but, it's a big ask.
It's a fascinating second coming, and it's, his name was always going to be mentioned around Donegal vacancies because people just long for, it's like Brian McAniff's name was always going to be mentioned after 92. Your name is always going to pop up, but did they ever actually think he was going to come back as manager? No, not realistically. Even though I was chatting to a few good sources last week and kind of tipped me off that he was the man. So I kind of just put it out there last week, and then all of a sudden, a couple of days later, and it snowballs, and all of a sudden he's manager, and he's this kind of stellar backroom team there. A couple of things. The last time he was senior manager, he had been with the 20s, and he'd taken a really good group. Remember Murphy hit the crossbar in the All-Ireland final against Dublin. I think Johnny Cooper was captain for Dublin, but he had Michael Murphy, probably the greatest Donegal player of all time, and this player who was going to be, senior for the next 10 years and was an unbelievable leader. I don't think those type of players are there now. And maybe McGuinness's intimate knowledge of the underage scene is probably not there, even though I'm sure his finger is still on the pulse there as well. For a couple of things, he's probably going to get the likes of Ryan McHugh, Michael Langan, all the O'Donnells, all these lads are probably going to come back into the fold. Wouldn't you come back into the fold? You would be, your chest would be up and you'd be thinking, geez, this is something to buy into here. Whereas maybe, last year, maybe that wasn't the case. But you wonder whether the personnel is there. Then you wonder, as you said, time has moved on. It's 9 years since they were beaten in the 14 All-Ireland final. I know he's had he's dipped in and out with Naomh Martin and Louth a bit, and he took a session with Galway, and he was with the Waterford hurlers a small bit as well. So he's been in around county scenes, but big difference between that and actually being manager. So it's going to be fascinating. We don't know, and I think that's the fascinating thing about it. They were at a pretty low ebb when he took over in 10, and they're at a low enough ebb now as well. Expectations probably aren't, in a way they aren't that high, but in a way they are quite high as well, because you're just expecting them to conjure something, get them to an unbelievable base of fitness, and come with some sort of system of play that we haven't seen before. And if he comes with something that we haven't seen before, brilliant. Intercounty football is craving for something like that now.
Yeah, and his years being involved in soccer means that there is always the chance that there's going to be a huge influence from soccer in what he's doing, because I think there's always crossovers from other sports into Gaelic football and, hurling to some degree as well. We've seen it with basketball, we've seen it with other sports. And I'd say soccer, definitely how players move. Sorry, the movement, the interchangeable movement of players and all that kind of stuff. You can see how there might be some sort of an influence there. But you have to ask, and I mean this respectfully, going back to Gaelic football at this point and knowing that, nothing of note has really happened since Charlotte independence and since leaving that role a few years ago. Is that kind of suggest that the door is closed to some degree on soccer, or that it's kind of, this is it, maybe it didn't fully work back to Gaelic football?
That's what it would suggest. I'm kind of hearing that he could have had the Finn Harps job last year if he wanted it. And I don't know if he was holding out for something maybe a bit bigger or whatever. That didn't materialise. And now he's back with Donegal. I think is it a three-year term with a view to a fourth or something like that. So he's gone. It's not like a stopgap or anything like that. He's gone in and he's going to give it all of his attention now. The soccer thing is interesting. It mightn't have been, a success strat like that, but I'm sure it's probably opened his eyes to different things and how to do things differently. He's Colin McFadden in the backroom team, who's obviously involved with Sligo. I think he was involved with Sligo in 2023. He'll, I'm sure, who's his brother-in-law, obviously, he'll, I'm sure, bring plenty to the table. Is it Eamon McGee that's involved with him as well? I think it's Eamon McGee. It's just going to be fascinating to see what the second coming is like. What style do they play? Most teams have figured out the McGuinness style now, or most intercounty teams are able to get around that. So what's his second coming in terms of game plans? And does he have the players? He had the players probably in 11 and 12, 13 and 14. Does he have the players to really go gung-ho now? That's probably a bit of a doubt as well, I'd have to say.
Yeah, and he was also able to capture their hearts and minds then. Can you capture the hearts and minds of a new generation with the way you talk? He's he's a very good speaker. I mean, I've seen him at so many press conferences and what have you, and leave out the 2012 All-Ireland final one where he had a journalist ejected from the room. Other than that, I thought he was very engaging to listen to and, really good. So let's see if he's able to capture the heart and minds of another generation, a newer generation.
Yeah, he is very engaging. He does draw you in, and a lot of those guys that he's going to be trying to draw in now are lads that were probably totally captivated by him 10 years ago when they were only teenagers. So yeah. I'd imagine they'd be hanging on his every word.
Do you know, I meant to bring this up earlier, but and I don't know how I stumbled upon it, because like we were preparing a little bit to talk about the Clare Hurling Championship this weekend, which we will. But I was looking up who had won some of the recent titles, and I saw an older title back in the 40s. Was it 1975? There was and 1947. A team called Bodyke from East Clare won the championship. And for whatever reason, I just clicked into it because I was like, I haven't heard of this club. And, you see a bit of the history. I'm not fully sure if they're still operating. I'm presuming they are. But their ground is called Parkna de Chevelhe, and it means the field of the evicted. And I just did the Irish-English translation, and it said expropriated. So I don't know if people think of it as expropriated or evicted, but that's an unusual ground name. I can't think of anything quite like that.
No, that's very unusual. I have heard of Bodyke, and I had heard of him winning a county title, but I didn't know much about the history or anything like that. If any of our Clare aficionados have any more information, we'd gladly take your arm off for it.
Yeah, Adrian McGrath, it's time you stepped up for us here. Let's run through some of the fixtures this weekend. So Ballygunner against Dungarvan. That's the Gunners going for 10 in a row, going for 54 wins in a row. But is Patrick Curran going to have the greatest performance of all time? And even at that, he might just break even with the likes of Patrick Fitzgerald or Desi Hutchinson or so on.
The problem here is, Shane, is that you can say that, and I'm thinking, yeah, he does. He needs to have an unbelievable performance, but will he just get lost in the system a small bit? That Ballygunner play, where if he's used to getting 10 to 12 possessions in a game, he'll only get 5 or 6, and there'll be 2 lads around him most of the time when he gets it now. That's just the kind of nature of it. A lot of the time, I've noticed any of the Waterford games I've been at the last few years, they just are able to nullify the big men on the opposition team so well. And it's not because they're man marking them or anything like that. It's just because their shape is so good and they're just so efficient with regards to their shape. There's not pockets of space for these really good players to get into. And there's always a couple of players around them and around the ball. And shape is the thing. I don't know if you saw it. I did a piece, just a profile piece around Sean O'Donnell, who's the stats man with Ballygunner and with Limerick, obviously, as well. And his CV is the length of it's the length of your arm realistically, but shape is the thing that they really go after. That he really goes after your shape on your puck outs, your shape on the opposition puck outs, making yourself unbelievably compact on opposition puck outs and kind of trying to make yourself expansive on your own puck outs and creating space. But you just don't get space against Ballygunner. And I'd say it here. I'd say Patrick Curran, 8 points, 6 frees at the weekend. That's just off the top of my head, because they squeeze you out of the game. They don't allow you to get in and control a game or dominate a game generally.
Yeah, there's a bit of change in the Ballygunner team. We've already said Ian Kenny's playing Premier Intermediate. Maybe he'll go back to senior at some point. He's obviously an excellent player. But some of the new players, Jake Foley, he's been playing full forward. Apparently he would have been there last year only for his ankle. Kevin Mahoney's playing wing back this year. Barry Coughlin is out with a slipped disc. And you have Harry Ruddle, who, of course, was the hero from a couple of years ago in the All-Ireland final. He's playing at full back. The game's on a
full back.
Full back. The game's
really?
on a...
Okay.
It could be a hurling full back. The way we're moving, it's... like you said there, teams don't really get in at them. So maybe having an extra hurler back there who can, the way they like to sort of... When they're coming out from the back, the players sort of spread out almost to the sideline. So he's somebody who could probably... Potentially, I don't know, I'm only guessing.
A la Declan Hannon centre back, a la Kyle Hayes wing back. Yeah. A la Barry Nash corner back.
Yeah.
There are teams that probably cross over from O'Donnell's teams that he's with. They're not looking for, a big, domineering fullback. That's kind of gone. That's not the way they play.
De La Salle against Clonea. So De La Salle would be seen as one of the teams that can sort of make a push this year, but I don't know. It's just hard to see Ballygunner being taken down. And some people would look at Clonea and the way they've played this year and think, right, Billy Power, who's been absolutely flying. Jason Gleeson, he scored 2-5 from play the last day. I think he might be a county footballer, but I don't know. Maybe David Fitzgerald will be keeping an eye on him. So I'm not sure. De La Salle, maybe Ruben Haller and the likes of Jack Fagan, maybe they can give him a bit of a push on in this one. 4 Mile Water and Abbey side, so that's going to be one West Waterford club into the semi-finals. 4 Mile Water haven't been in the county final for the last 7 years, but the Barons have been playing well. And Abbey then, I think Conor Prunty's carrying an injury. So, Neil Montgomery, he's also a doubt from the last day. Michael Kiley, he's back. So, that's going to be a tight one there. Rowan Moore against Mount Sion. So
just quickly, Shane, on Abbey side. So Conor Prunty hadn't played. I don't think he'd played. He missed the Tipperary game through injury. I think he was in a boot or crutches that day. So this is his first time back. He's had a good bit of trouble with his Achilles, which is kind of worrying because that's not, like an ankle injury or hamstring or something like that. Like that's your spring. Like that's like
it's a horror of an injury.
That is for an athlete, like a track athlete, that's a potential career ender because if you tear your Achilles or do anything down there, you're basically losing your bounce, your spring, like the long jumpers have or the high jumpers have, and it's all on telly at the moment in Budapest. But that's a bit of a worry. He came on, obviously, and then I don't know if he's fully right. And Neil Montgomery is definitely not right by the sounds of things as well. So you'd probably have to tip the hat to 4 Mile Water in that one.
Yeah, so Rowan Moore against Mount Sion, the finalists of the last 2 years. Mount Sion haven't been great this year. Ozzie Gleeson, he's moved around different positions, wing back, midfield, centre forward, full forward, got sent off against 4 Mile Water. Rowan Moore, fairly consistent this year, and Billy Nolan apparently brilliant at centre back. Gavin O'Brien's been lethal on the frees. Conor Ryan, who we saw with the county this year, he's been very good. Also, there's relegation semi-finals this weekend. Passenger against Lismore and Dunhiller against Tallow. By the way, Adrian McGrath, Clareman, has got onto us about Bodyke. It's Liam Doyle's club. Leo Doyle may never invite Verney on Scariff Bay Radio again. The pitch commemorates a famous mass eviction of people in the 1880s. It turned into a massive battle. So what was so famous about the mass eviction? What was the details around that, Adrian? We want a full history lesson here. Leo
Doyle of Scariff Bay Radio. Yeah, I often help out the lads every now and then. Great hurling men. I'll be excommunicated, I'd say, by the sounds of things. Yeah. Just a quick one, Shane, on Billy Nolan. So he obviously sat in and played that sweeper role really well against Tipp that day. What do you think his 2024 looks like?
There's a question. I'd say, if you're Davy, right, and you're looking at what worked for us this year, you'll say that was one of the things that worked. Yeah. So why not persevere with it? I've seen him play centre back for WIT or whatever they're called these days in the not too distant past, and he's quite good there. I know it's different to the county, but it's not and not everyone's trying to be Declan Hannon when they play a 6 or whatever, but it's not like Declan Hannon is blisteringly fast these days. He's a brilliant hurler and all that kind of stuff. But Billy Nolan is a brilliant hurler, and he's not slow, but he's not lightning. So I don't see why you wouldn't try it. If they saw it delivered in a big game in Thurles, as in it was, even though they were out, it was big for them because, they didn't want to end the season on a really bad note. What else has worked? Caleb Lyons has obviously worked, but he's in Australia, I believe, at the moment. And will he be back next year? So that's potentially a huge loss. I think Stephen Bennett might be on his way back from Australia, or he is back already. And if you're talking about injuries to Conor Prunty there, you're hoping he's right. You just wonder, would Mark Fitzgerald, who's a young lad and only came in last year, he's not going to play that role, you'd imagine, next year. Kartik Daly, I think he might have done his cruciate, so that kind of rules him out of it. I don't see why not. Why wouldn't it? Tyg de Burke could play it, assuming he's 100% right as well. But again, injuries, so it might almost be by default.
Yeah, I just think it's going to be interesting to see whether they go with that from the off. And maybe that conversation has been had already that we need you to be in tip-top shape and we're going to play as an outfield next year, and we're probably going to look at maybe Sean O'Brien in the goals. That'll be interesting to see. And as you say, if you're looking at the pros and the cons of what went well this year, that was definitely a big pro, and he was on the ball some amount against Tipp. Now, there were probably mitigating factors. Tipp were awful the same day, and definitely played into his hands as well. But the fact that he's excelling at club level, now to be fair, even before this year, he'd been excelling at club level out the pitch as well. So we'll watch that one fairly closely.
And speaking of Tip, it's back in action this weekend, the county championship. It's going to be the third round of the group stages. So there's so much at stake here. Of the 24 teams involved, 22 of them have something at stake this weekend. That's quite something, isn't it?
Well, it's what you want in a championship, isn't it? In fairness, that's what you want. You want jeopardy the whole time, where possible. Jeopardy coming down to the last group or round of games, where possible at all, because it keeps it interesting, it keeps it honest.
Yeah, and like I suppose this is the beauty of making sure in your county championship, and this is the way in Dublin, that the two teams that win the first day in the group and the two teams that lose, they play each other. So it ensures that there's a bit of jeopardy heading into the last game. So I think that's really important. So do you want to go ahead and ask me about the Tip Championship, or what will we do?
Yeah, I tell you what, I just an outside observation. Have my Carkey Boris been a bit unlucky?
They have, because they what was the fixture the first day out?
Holy Cross, was it, I think?
Yeah, so, I mean, they have been. Like, they're a very good quality team. They drew the first day out with Roscrea, actually. So my Carkey this weekend, they're up against Killerwan, who are the county champions, but they're already out of the championship.
Yeah.
So Killerwan are looking to win this game to ensure that they don't go into relegation, which, that would be hugely frustrating for them. But, my Carkey Boris, like, it's just a frustrating one because they could have won that game against Roscrea. Now they need to win and hope that the results go their way. They'll just need basically Tumivara to beat Roscrea in the other game, which may or may not happen.
So they can still go through?
I think they can still go through because they drew at Roscrea. It involves a bit of a scoring swing as well.
Okay.
So if my Carkey won by, Roscrea are on +5, my Carkey are on -1, and they both finish on 3 points if my Carkey and Toom won. And then it would need a 6-point swing, which, isn't beyond the realms of possibility.
Yeah,
so that's a bit frustrating. So Eddie Brennan is in there this year. Right, we might just start off with Group 1, though. Mullinahone against Nina Ayr Oak and Drummond Inch against JK Brackens. So actually Drummond Inch and JK Brackens is one of the few games that doesn't have anything riding on it, because Brackens, they're already guaranteed in the relegation, and Drum, they're already through. But Drum have actually been making a bit of a push into football as well. Seamus Callanan was playing centre-back for them last weekend, and they had the win there. They have a few dual players. And actually, Paddy Cadell, remember at the start of the year or earlier in the year, we thought he'd done his cruciate. Well, he'd partially torn the cruciate, and he came back for about 20 minutes in the second round game, I think it was, for Brackens, so the last day out. And then he played the full football match last weekend and was man of the match. So you'd be hoping he'd hit the ground running for Tipperary next year. So Mullinahone against Nina Ayr Oak, that's basically a straight shootout for the runners-up spot in the group, but a draw will be enough for Nina based on scoring difference, and Nina already won the North as well, so they're through. Did they win the North?
Is Jake Morris back?
No, himself and I always mix up Mikey and Tommy Heffernan, but himself and one of the two of those have been out injured, and Jake won't be back until the quarter-final stage is what they were expecting. They were expecting it was about a 7-week injury, so I don't think they're expecting him back just yet.
At least to have that trapdoor of winning the division and coming back in, and he should be back. Even if they don't get out of the group, he should be back fit. He should be back fit for the knockout stages anyway. Even though that's a tough kind of blow to come back from, to be honest with you, you're not going to be in top form coming back from that sort of a blow.
Yeah, and Nina are the North champions, but you just wonder how much training can he do. So if you get I think it's a fractured jaw, isn't it? So how much training can you do? Can you do bike work? Can you do any running work? At what point can you do that? Or do you have to wait until you get an x-ray and it's fully clear? And how long does that take with a jaw compared with, let's say, a hand? And it's also down to the severity of the break. But that game should be a really good one. Drum have been looking quite good this year. And obviously, Callanan's still doing a job. And Tommy Nolan and a couple more in the team. They're the two champions who, of course, will be fresh after the season with Tipperary and probably mad for hurling. But I think that's going to be a good game. Mullinahone, who do they have in the gap? Only Owen Kelly.
Son of God.
Wearing the number 1 jersey, huh? And there's lads like him that you can imagine extending their career on for another 5 or 10 years with that. I mean, there's county players out there, recently retired and some still playing, who you're thinking, you could get another 5 years out of Joe Canning if he played in goals with Galway. Let's say Noel McGrath called time. You'd be like, well, maybe you could play another 5 years in the goals.
There's a couple of lads anyway. Bubbles would be another one as well. Could easily play in the goals. the more that puck outs and being able to put the ball in a certain position and being able to do things unbelievably well and unbelievably efficiently and put ball in certain areas, the more guys like that thrive, without a doubt. Yeah, definitely. Maybe TJ Reid will drop back into the goals and kick Kenny or something.
Who knows? Group 2 then sees Tumivara top on 4 points. You've kind of already mentioned it. Ross Gray are second then on 3. Moycarkey Burris, they're on 1. Killerwan are bottom. Like this is one of those situations where Killerwan haven't been helped by injuries, and then lads been away in America, and it's just the accumulation of that has definitely hampered them throughout this season. And it's very strange to see a team going from county champions and they had such a brilliant run to now being in this situation. But would you have seen that much across the country, or people you talked to in your friend group, where the fact that teams are back playing their county championships so early in the summer that they're suffering from lads being away an awful lot? It's definitely something I've seen.
No, yeah, definitely. And even with Kilruan, like, I wonder if they hadn't won last year, would lads have headed away? Do you know what I mean? It's almost like the monkeys, not the monkeys off the back, but they've done something incredible last year, and all the kind of history that went with it. There's probably less of a guilt, I'd say, for lads going away, to be honest with you. I'd say that's probably part of it as well. But around the country now, and particularly, and I know Conor Mack said earlier about championships being brought forward, there are lads that have different things booked at different stages or whatever, or going away at different stages, and they're missing bits and pieces. And it just, I don't know, maybe society has changed, but that wouldn't have been accepted 10 years ago. But it seems to be far more accepted now than it would have been then. Like, you would have been excommunicated back in the day if you were going off doing something like that. But listen.
Yeah, times change. Tumivara as well, one of the breakout players for them this year has been Darren McCarthy. He's somebody to watch out for. Ross Gray have been looking quite good as well. Alan Tynan seems to be playing some decent stuff. Group 3 sees Lockmore. They're on 4 points. Holy Cross, they're on 2. Upper Church Stromban are on 2 as well. And Templederry Kenyans, they're at the bottom at the moment as well. But there's still an outside chance that they could qualify. But I'm sure you heard about it there not so long ago. Lockmore are playing Holy Cross. Lockmore thought they were 2 points up late on, or the scoreboard said that anyway. So Holy Cross started lobbing ball in, looking for a late goal, lobbed in a late 65. Turns out they were only 1 point behind.
That's mad, isn't it?
So like, they should both be top of the group here with 3 points each, and Holy Cross then looking fairly sweet to get through. But instead now they're.
I've seen that happen. I saw that happen in a county semi-final in Offaly years ago. In Kilcormac, the score was wrong, and it totally changes the dynamic of the last couple of minutes, whether a team is trying to force a goal or just keep the scoreboard ticking over and take points. It's amazing how often it happens, to be honest with you.
Yeah. So the 2 games in that group this weekend are Holy Cross Ballycahill against Templederry Kenyans. Cathal Barrett playing centre forward. Wouldn't like to come up against him if you were a centre back, would you? You're like trying to hold your spot, and he's going out getting ball, then turning and running at you.
Yeah, I'd say it is a different kettle of fish. He's a cornerback that's always been like, and this is I'm just saying as a defender, not talking about him specifically, where you're the bully. You are, as a defender, you're the bully, like, because you can see everything in front of you and you can go bald headed for the ball. When you're playing centre forward and there's a puck out or something coming down on top of you, you're a sitting duck a lot of the time, and it does take a lot of it's even your spatial awareness to try and drift in behind, or your positioning. It's not something that's like, he would have played out middle of the field, he would have played centre back, he wouldn't have played that much in the forward line. If you can get him on the ball, he'll be A1. But I'd say maybe getting the ball, particularly under puckouts and stuff like that, could be tricky, I'd say.
Do you know, when you're relocating from the backs to the forwards, I think centre forward is the most difficult place to move to, because I've done that as well, playing backs an awful lot over the years, and then move up centre forward. I think it's harder to know where you're supposed to be. Where's the cute place to be? Game can really bypass you there. Midfield, I'd say, is another one for that.
Do you know what else, though, Shano, as well, is if you're playing that centre forward and you're playing in the pocket, but your teammates don't realise you're playing in the pocket, and the ball is just lobbed out, like, that's so demoralising. The ball is lobbed down to the centre back, and you're like, lads, I'm standing out here in the middle of the field, and you're making the centre back look like an all-star.
Whereas full forward is the easiest to adjust to if you're a decent size or whatever, especially. But actually, we played a challenge match this with the Coola Thirds against St. Pat's of Wicklow recently, and Andy O'Brien, your old county buddy, he was on me, and a few times I made the burst to the left looking for the ball, and he was cute and just waited for it in the middle, and you're just like, so frustrating. Now, he won a few great balls, he was actually very good. and you can see like he's still in great shape or whatever. But there are times when you're like, I've got myself a yard here, and then the ball is just played the other side, and you want to kill a lad. But
basically, what you're saying is, I've got
Yes.
myself in a position, and my teammates have let me down.
Yeah, look. Although I do enjoy saying to them, look, lads, just let the ball in and start celebrating. I enjoy saying that. But anyway, that's third team. We're not exactly, we're not exactly talking the cream of the crop in terms of like beating, I don't know who Ballyhale Shamrocks here. It's not as if we're
No, you're about as far away from that now as possible. A Sully 180 just says, and this is true, you do need lads on the line to be questioning the scoreboard, and you need lads on the line to be questioning the referee. You can't be kind of passive in that regard. You probably have someone designated within your management team just to be looking after the score and that type of thing, just making sure you're on top of that. Because if it gets to the final whistle and the score hasn't been changed, or there's been a mistake made throughout the game and it hasn't been corrected, then you're in a bit of trouble. That's actually, it's funny enough, that's when the journalists come into question, because the referee will not really believe anybody else's score taken except the neutral journalist who's covering it for a paper or for radio or whatever it is.
But the referee had it right. It was just the scoreboard had it wrong.
Right. That's, well, they should be, then it should be a case of probably someone on a walkie-talkie to whoever's doing the scoreboard and just tell them, or the referee even saying to the person doing the scoreboard, this needs to be corrected or whatever, which they're generally, I've noticed they're generally quite good at, to be fair.
Yeah, because a lot of the time, I wouldn't blame the ref for the scoreboard, but it is just like someone should be clarifying, someone should be aware on the sideline. And like often like players on a team would say to the ref, what's left, just what's in it or whatever, so like the message should get around somewhere. Group 4 in Tip this weekend. On TG Carr, we're going to see Bursley against Thurles Sarsfields. The other game in the group is Clonalty Rossmore against Killadangan. All 4 teams can get through in this one. So Bursley, they're on 3 points. Killadangan are on 2. Thurles Sarsfields are on 2. And Clonalty Rossmore are on 1. So I think there's good reason that TG Carr have gone and lined this game up. Bursley, very good against Killadangan the last day. For the first half, went 10 points up. Then coming out for the second half, Brendan Maher had a bit of a dizzy spell. So as he was coming onto the pitch, the game was stopped for a minute or two, and he ended up being taken off. Bursley rejigged the team, brought Dan McCormick from the half-forward line back down the field. Bursley were all at sea. Killadangan ended up going 2 points ahead, having been 10 down. And then one last ball up the field. Dan McCormick wins it after being removed back to the forward line. Brendan Maher has just come back on, pops the ball to Brendan, and he sort of slots the ball into the top corner from maybe 21 yards out, and Bursley win. And either team could have won it, and that's just the way it happened. So it was kind of riot or over stuff.
Mad game, mad finish to it as well. And like I was following bits of it on Clubber, and you're just looking like Bursley are in total control of this game. Then all of a sudden the game is gone from them, and then Brendan wasn't too dizzy at the end because there was the one place he wanted to put the ball was exactly where he put it in the top left. It was an outrageous finish. Another. Like, geez, he has some club highlight reel, let alone county highlights.
I think this will be a good game. I've watched Thurles this year. They were quite good against Clonalty. They won by 3. That was a day when they'd lost to Killadangan the day before, and they didn't have Ronan Maher and they didn't have David Corbett, and they looked shy of those 2 guys that day. Ronan came back both of them came back the next day, and Ronan in particular, as you can imagine, is quite dominant at club level at times, and they won that game. But the last day out, the first day out against Killadangan, they had a great start to the game, and they just looked quite poor. And I don't know if there's a great balance to their team. Like Dennis Maher has been used in the full forward line, with great effect in recent years. But he played centre back when Ronan wasn't there. Then he was full back the last day, and I just don't know if they've the right balance of speed and power in different positions. They're sort of, and I'm not saying this about Dennis, but they're quite a big cumbersome team in places. And then they do have smaller, more kind of energetic players, athletic players as well, with the likes of Conor Stakelum, Dara Stakelum, Aidan McCormick. But just the balance is a little bit off. But they do sort of have the Indian sign over Bursley in recent years. So I'd say Paddy Maher as manager there will be thinking, right, we'll get them into the stadium here that we know so well, and we'll pick off Bursley.
I know it's much changed, but they gave him a fair scutcheon in a county final. What are we talking?
7 years ago?
Yeah, ish. Obviously, there's a fair bit moved on since then. Yeah, there's a fair bit to play. There's a fair bit to play for that game, and it's a great game to have on the box at the weekend. Definitely, without a doubt. Even though I don't like Tipperary to be front and center ever, but in this case, you'll kind of just put the hands up and say, "Listen, it's probably due."
Yeah, and I was on Tipcast with Shane Brophy and Dennis Kelly yesterday. So I'll just play a little bit of a clip from that. I think this was previewing Bursley against Sarsfields.
The confidence and the hearts weren't good there near the end, I'd say, for some of the Boris lads, because to throw away a 10-point lead, it would have been criminal, really. In fairness, Kildangan really came strong, but at the same time, the lads showed great courage, I suppose, to come back, and Brendan was a big part of that, I suppose. It did unsettle the team at half-time. When you think Brendan Maher is a leader on the team, he's leader with Tipp, let alone with Boris Lee, and then to see him going off, it gives players a bit of a fright, I suppose, and it took him a good while to recover from it. But I think they could throw off the shackles a bit now against Sars, because they probably need something out of it to qualify, but at the same time, they could have been facing relegation as easily. So that's off the monkey off their back, and they can go at this one hard. And Sars, they haven't been fantastic either this year. They had a good finish to the game against Clonalty, but at the same time, they'll neither team fear each other too much, and I'd say it could be a right good game.
Yeah, and just Shane, to give the context to anyone who hasn't seen what's been going on in the group, Boris Lee are top with 3 points, Kildangan have 2, so do Thurles Sarsfields, and Clonalty Rossmore are on 1 point, and they were in a great position against Boris Lee to win, but didn't see it out in the first day. But we've talked there in recent weeks about how Thurles have a lot of big players, big physical athletes, but maybe sometimes there's not as much pace across the pitch. Whereas Boris Lee, actually now, especially with Niall Kenny not there, they've an awful lot of smaller, nippier type players, and finding the balance is the big challenge. And of course, without putting Dennis on the spot, moving Jerry around might be key to that as well, which they've done. But so it's a contrasting of styles, I suppose, in some ways.
Yeah, look, I think Bursley probably got their answer in the Kildangan match. They were so good in the first half with Jerry at 6, Brendan at 5, and Dan in a half hour. And then when Brendan goes off, they move Dan back to the half back line, and they miss his physical presence and his leadership in attack. And so I think they'll go back to what they did in the first half and then towards the end of the Kildangan match.
Yeah, so there's plenty more of that available on Tipcast if you want to have a look at that. Clonalty Rossmore against Kildangan is also a game we've mentioned as well. So Clonalty will be hoping that Jack Ryan is fit for that game. He limped off against Sarsfields. He's Declan Ryan's son, of course, and he was involved in the county panel this year. And Conor Hammersley, there's talk that he might be back as well, which would be a huge lift for them. So there's so much at stake in that championship this weekend. Do you want to bring us on to the Clare Championship?
Yeah, plenty on the line in Clare this weekend as well. So there's a chance that all 4 last year's semi-finalists get eliminated this weekend, although all 4 could still go through. And the chance of the 4 of them actually going out is probably pretty slim, but that's Airog, Ballyea, 6 Mile Bridge and Cratloe. So just fly through the games here. So you have Clonlara versus Crusheen on Friday. So that's a potential game of the week. Winner takes all.
Your great underachievers, Clonlara, as you've liked to call them over the years.
Well, if you look at the players that they've had available to them, I think any of them will tell you that they haven't won as much as they would have expected to be honest with you, given the amount of players that they have available to them, the class of players. I think John Conlon is involved with the Loughrea backroom team, actually. I think I saw that last weekend. John Conlon was obviously still playing with Clonlara. So Clonlara are on a high after beating 6 Mile Bridge. They outworked and outhurled them. A draw will do for Donald Madden's side. And John Conlon is obviously still in serious form, carrying on the form that he had with Clare during the year, and he's probably the most likely centre back all-star. You'd have to say Crusheen need to win this game. So it's a winner takes all game. It's difficult enough one to call, to be honest with you. And a lot of the games are like that. So the Bridge are playing O'Callaghan's Mills. So if the Mills will and Crusheen get a draw or better, then the Bridge are in relegation, which is it's unlikely, and you'd probably be just about favouring the Bridge in that game. Cratloe against Clooney Quinn, that's like a straight up winner takes all kind of a game to see who goes through. A draw will do Clooney Quinn. They're obviously without Ryan Taylor, who did his cruciate against
Yeah.
Kilkenny, and we were talking about that it looked like a nasty enough kind of injury when he came off after something like 31 minutes in the All-Ireland semi-final. And it's the ramifications of that now for him for next year are huge, let alone the club season. Like he's going to, I think he's getting operated at the end of this month. So like if he's back for the start of June, middle May, June next year, he's going to be under pressure, obviously. And Peter Duggan is available after he picked up a red card in one of the earlier games. He was playing the hurling for cancer the other night, actually, among a galaxy of GA stars that were in Netwatch Cullen Park the other night for the best of causes. Cratloe, you're probably just about favouring in that game as well. You might fly through the next one.
Yeah, so I'm interested to know if there's anyone there who's been watching the games down in Clare. If Conor Ryan has played much for Cratloe, there was, he is back with them, so you'd hope he's doing well. Podge Collins, he'd missed the football last weekend, so I think that was with an injury knock of some sort, so maybe he'll be back. They weren't great against Newmarket and Fergus, so let's see if they're better the next day. Aero Guinness against Clare Castle, so Shane O'Donnell will certainly have to be watched there. David Reedy as well. Fecal meet Broadford, Kilmaley against Ina Kilnamona. Kilmaley are 2 from 2, and Ina Kilnamona, who were in the county final a couple of years ago, they're winning their 2 games. Ballyea Scariff is, in some ways it's the sexy game of the weekend, but Tony Kelly, he's out with a serious enough ankle injury, so you just wonder, how long is he going to be out, and will that be the entirety of the clubs? They won the county title without him. Was it 2 years ago?
Yeah, they beat Ina Kilnamona, and that was a very hard one to take for Ina Kilnamona because, you'd be feeling that you should be beating Ballyea without Tony Kelly, and they didn't. Saw a picture going around of Tony Kelly in a boot again, which is a bit worrying because he's had a
same ankle.
I'm not sure of that now, but he's had a fair since that Waterford. What was that? COVID All-Ireland quarter final down in Parky Queeve, was it? When he to come off, or he stayed on, I think, for a good bit of it. He's had a good bit of trouble with that, and that's a little bit worrying. And I know a few of his off-colour displays over the last couple of years, particularly Kilkenny in the All-Ireland semi-final in 2022, lads would have put it down to that he was, there was a reoccurrence of that ankle injury. So that's kind of a worrying one, and it's definitely something that he needs to get right. And I know we're a long way away, but with Ryan Taylor out next year and the potential maybe for other players maybe not to be around, Tony Kelly needs to be, on top of his game. And I know we're 6 months out, but the ramifications of what he does now for 7 or 8 months down the line with Clare are kind of huge. So that's what we're talking about, maybe Conor Prunty playing injured. If you're playing injured at this time of the year, it's not just now or next week or next month. It probably has ramifications for months down the line where you're not moving that well, or you're just not maybe able to train properly. So that's one that we look closely at. Scariff are playing brilliant stuff, and they were brilliant against Ina Kilnamona. Mark Rogers obviously in really, really good form. And if Kelly is out, they'll fancy their chances there. And I believe the betting was fairly skewed in Ballyea's favour. And then all of a sudden people think that maybe Tony Kelly's going to be out, or it looks like he's going to be out. And people are probably thinking Scariff could potentially cause a bit of an upset. The Brennans aren't involved at this stage anyway. Gary and Killian, and I think Pierce Lillis is out as well. So they're down a fair few of their bigger players. Yeah,
and Patrick Ryan scored 3-3 the last day against Inamona, and Patrick Crotty scored 5. Adrian McGrath adds that if Broadford beat Fecal, Airog will need a big win to get through to the quarters. Some of the other hurling going on this weekend. There's a Monaghan hurling semi-final. Carrick Crosser against Inishkeen. In Wicklow, round 4 of the hurling championship. Aero Greystones against Bray Emmett. Bray going for 5 in a row. Carnew against Avondale and Kiltegan against Glenealy. Roscommon knockout. Roscommon Gales against Oran. Tremaine against St. Dominic's. And then Ray says you can't have 2 clubs senior. Now, this is our researcher telling us that and who is from Watford, saying that they will next year. But look,
I dispute that. I would highly dispute that. Yeah. Because definitely, I know it definitely can't happen in Offaly, because Kilcormac would be fancied to probably be thereabouts in the senior B this year, and it won't be Kilcormac A and Kilcormac B at senior. Definitely not. And I know that was the case with Burr in the late 90s as well, when they won intermediate, maybe 2 or 3 in a row, I think. You just end up regrading players. They make sure that 7 of the team will say have to be senior players next year, and that means there has to be a new intermediate team the year after.
Yeah. Adrian McGrath's 6 Mile Bridge have had 2 teams at senior before, so sounds like it does happen.
Maybe in Munster, not in Leinster.
Yeah. So we'll move on to the next section then. The Dublin Football Championship is on this weekend. So Ballyboden are against Ballantyre St. John's. So both teams won last weekend, so that should be a tasty enough fixture. The other 2 teams meeting will be Temple Oak Sing Street against Ballymun Kickham. So Ballymun lost that first game against Bowden by 5, so they'll be looking to bounce back here in a big way.
How difficult is that for the likes of McCarthy and even Dean Rock? It was only just married, and that it's not simple coming straight back into it. Now the Limerick boys have taken it to it like a duck to water by all accounts in the hurling, and went straight back into it 2 weeks later. But it isn't simple. Like, you've a hangover in your head and a hangover in your body, everything, like the emotional. You know, when you're putting everything into trying to win All Ireland or whatever. Well, like, I don't know much about it now myself, actually, but I'm sure those lads put absolutely everything into that, and you are spent after. Like, you are. That's just the nature of it. Like, so, Ballymun will be the sort of team that if they can maybe bounce back and get on a bit of a run, but they were probably never going to hit the ground running straight away.
Yeah. Some of the other fixtures, I'll just cherry pick 1 or 2. Nafina against Whitehall this weekend. Both teams lost in the first round, so both will need a victory this weekend. I'll obviously be keeping an eye, hoping and praying as I look through my fingers that there's no injuries as well. St. Jude's are against St. Vincent's. So Vincent's had a good win over Whitehall, and Jude's were very impressive in their win over Nafina. And I think Nafina got a goal late on to sort of take the bad look off it to some degree. And they were finalists last year, so they obviously have the quality. So that should make for a couple of tasty fixtures there. Cooler against Luke and Sarsfields as well. Kilmacud Crokes will meet Castleknock. So we see that this week, Paul Mannion, he's committed to Dublin for 2024. He was player of the month there for August. Yeah, like, are Crokes going to be going for it again this year? They are, of course, aren't they?
They are, of course, yeah. I think the fact that Mannion has kind of nailed his colours to the mast as well, maybe like we thought there was going to be a mass exodus, maybe there won't be. Maybe the vast majority. I do expect Dean Rock to retire. And
I think previously, Bernard Brogan, Dennis Bastick, these lads all went to 35.
Yeah, true enough, yeah. It's not even that, but it's just like you're hearing maybe that Brian Fenton might be going travelling, or you're hearing, like, will Cluxton stay on? But if one stays on, and then all of a sudden the manager stays on, and most of the backroom team stays on, maybe the vast majority of them will stay on. It'll stay on again. But Mannion just said at the moment, yeah, nothing has changed. I've just got to see how we're going with Crokes, how the body is feeling. I'm just really hoping I can stay injury free again over the winter. So, like, imagine like how much better Crokes will be potentially this year if they have a fully fit Shane Walsh and a fully fit Paul Mannion. If anything, they could be an even harder prospect to stop in Dublin and beyond.
Okay, well, there's a huge amount of football going on across the country this weekend. We won't touch on it all, but we'll be zoning in more and more on the different championships as the week goes on and it gets to the more important stuff at the end of the season. But just a reminder that if you want to get a club fundraiser done, email events@ourgame.ie will help sort you out as well. If you want to get one of the coaching clinics brought to your club, email events@ourgame.ie. And ourstore.ie is also the home of merchandise on Our Game. Michael, anything else before we finish up?
No, just the last couple of little bits and pieces of news. I think James Horn is back in management. He's involved with the Mayo under-20s. And Jimmy Lee's taken over in Limerick. So his brother Billy was manager a couple of years ago. They had a bit of turbulence kind of last year with Ray Dempsey taking over, and then Mark Fitzgerald taking over from him. So that's, brother to brother nearly. I'm going to finish on the quiz, Shane, really, really quickly.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, really quickly, because there's varying degrees of difficulty in these questions. We'll start off with easy and we'll end up with probably difficult enough at the end. So question number 1, who won this year's Puck Fada? So the men's Puck Fada. Who won this year's men's Puck Fada? Question number 2, I know you love this one. Who is Offaly's last hurling all-star? So who is Offaly's last hurling all-star? And I'm talking about, the main all-stars. So who won this year's Puck Fada? Who is Offaly's last hurling all-star? And there's a bit of thinking required here. Amy O'Connor is only the 5th player to score 3 or more goals in an All-Ireland senior final. That's across either camogie, hurling, football, or ladies football since the turn of the millennium. So she's only the 5th player to score a hat-trick in 3 or more or scored 3 or more goals in All-Ireland senior final since the turn of the millennium. This is county we're talking about.
Yeah.
Name 3 others who have done so.
Okay, Puck Fada.
Puck Fada?
Can't think of the name of the guy, and I've seen the picture. That's can't.
Disappointing. Fionn Mackesy. Disappointing. That's to add to his 3rd level All-Stars in hurling and football in the same year. And now he's won the Puck Fada. Who's Offaly's last hurling All-Star?
I mean, is it someone like Ger Oakley?
No, Ger Oakley never got a nomination for an All-Star, let alone an All-Star. What year? Any year? What year would it be?
Well, 02 was the last time you got to a final, and then you spent 20 years shitting the course. So
no, 2000 is the last final we got to.
All the ones. Don't know.
Johnny Dooley, middle of the park, 2000. Johnny Dooley in 2000. And the quiz, name three other players. So four other players outside of Amy O'Connor have got a hat-trick in All-Ireland senior county and an All-Senior final with the county. Named 3 of them.
Lara Corbett, Shane
Correct.
O'Donnell.
Yeah.
The
other 2 are tough now, to be fair. They're both Cork and they're both Cork and they're both women.
Oh.
No, it's very tough, to be fair. So
Go on.
Fiona O'Driscoll for Cork Camogie in 2002 and Valerie Mulcahy in 2008 All-Ireland final. They were tricky enough now, to be fair.
They were.
I'll tell you what, SSRI is on the ball today. He had 2 out of 3.
Yeah. Look, as ever, I was a disappointment in the quiz. Right, so that's us back. We'll be back again on Monday. We'll probably go with a lunchtime show, will we?
Yeah, I'd say we probably will. And we might do a little report card for the various counties throughout the year as well. And we look back on the county season too.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you want to get the audio podcast, go to patreon.com/OurGame. Michael, chat to you over the weekend.
Cheers, Shane.